殿堂入りの発表が間近となり、イチロー選手の満票での殿堂入りと、現役選手の中で誰が殿堂入りするのか予想する話題が公式番組から上がってきました。大谷選手ももちろんですが、あの選手たちもランクインしているようです。ぜひ最後までご覧ください。
Hey, who's going to get in? There's a full ballot right now, and I'm telling you, you can focus on a couple names specifically. Ichiro, first time here. CC Sabathia, first time on that ballot, and a slew of others in there. Of course, there's always a lot of conjecture on the likes of Manny Ramirez or Alex Rodriguez, even names like Carlos Beltran, perhaps, for reasons more than one, are fascinating in terms of casting your vote. We start, though, with Ichiro, who, by the way, is also eligible for the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame, Ronnie, January 16th. So he'll find out whether or not he gets into that one first and then potentially into Cooperstown. The question really is this. Everyone knows he's going to get in.
Yeah.
Will he be the second unanimous player ever?
I think he will. That's how great he's been. Baseball Hall of Fame, not the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. So
yes,
you have to consider all the things that he has done in his career in Japan as well. Try to put yourself back in history of when he emerged with the Seattle Mariners. It was a league filled with big sluggers, didn't know what they were taking. The home run was the big thing in the game. And here's a guy, a singles hitter, who could do everything in the game. He could run, he could hit, he could field. Maybe one of the best throwing arms in the history of the game. Just great mechanics. If you wanted to watch a player play defense and then say to yourself, you know, that's how you have to play defense. That's how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
You're just so well-schooled, a beautiful player as well. You know, some of the things you tend to forget. There was a real elegance part to his game as well. It was just fun watching him.
I completely agree. He was a guy who really loved to play baseball, and he loved watching him play baseball. CC Sabathia is going to get in his first year on the ballot. It's interesting, Ronnie. Think about those great years he had with Cleveland and the Yankees. But I'll never forget what he did with Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Ever knew he was a pending free agent? He went out there and pitched them into the playoffs. It was incredible.
You know, you have stories in today's game where guys don't want to pitch because they want to make sure they get their bag, get their contract. Well, CC Sabathia was never like that. Listen, when I think of a starting pitcher throughout the history of the game, this is what I think about.
Yeah.
I think about these kinds of gladiators, and CC is one of those guys. He went out there. He protected his team. He always gave him the best chance to win. He protected his players. You know, he did that many times. Just a gamer in every sense of the word. And you're right. What he did in Milwaukee will never be forgotten. And also, his first year with the Yankees was their last World Championship.
They had to win a title. They bring in CC.
Right.
He gets it done. And a big, fun-loving, gregarious guy. Obviously, we're lucky to have him doing some stuff here on the network as well. Billy Wagner is fascinating, Ronnie. Last chance here on the ballot. 10th and final year. Closers have been viewed differently over time. The good news is this. He's been going up incrementally. Last year, pretty good jump, 60 to 73. Normally, you feel like guys get that close, they get in. Again, you need 75%. Would you vote for Billy Wagner?
Yes, 100%. And for him to lose because he was 6 ballots shy last year, it would really be a shame that he did not go in. Listen, we talk about plenty of guys who throw 100 miles an hour now. We only talked about one guy who threw 100 miles an hour then. And that was Billy Wagner, who had the ability to not only have a great career, but also he's done something that very few players do. He was great from the second he took the field to the second he left the field.
Yeah.
Not many players get a chance to say that.
Do you think he's been hurt by the fact we just view closers differently? In the past, you see 422 saves, and now they go, well, saves doesn't really matter as much. Like, what's been the issue, you think?
Well, I think what has hurt him is two things. One is that his postseason numbers aren't great, okay?
Right.
But we're also comparing him because he was the same generation of the greatest closer in the history of the game.
Right.
So everyone comes up a little short when you compare it to Mariano. But when he came in a game, much like Mason Miller now for the Athletics, you get your seat, you sit down in your seat, and you watch him because of the talent he had.
Andruw Jones is another fascinating guy because look at his first 10 years. This guy was one of the best players in baseball, ton of home runs, obviously incredible defensively, and again, trending up. It's taken a few years, but you feel like at this trajectory, I don't know if he gets in this year, but he'll get in before year 10. What hurts him, they say, is the decline came rather rapidly. But again, at his peak, he was one of the best players in the game.
Well, the decline comes rapidly for a lot of players. You know, once they hit that 35 number, that will happen. But what he did early in his career, the home runs in the World Series against the Yankees, if you remember, as a 19-year-old, he was maybe the last greatest center fielder that we've seen in quite some time. There's still a lot of good ones, but he separated himself defensively, power, the ability, and a winner.
Yeah.
Played with all those winning teams. So I'm more of a big haul guy, as you can notice. So Andrew Jones is in for me.
Yeah, look at those season averages from that one stretch. 34 home runs, 103 RBI, right. And of course the defense speaks for itself. Which brings us to Carlos Beltran. If he wasn't a first ballot guy, he would have got in, I would have thought, by the second year. But we all know what's hurt his case, and of course being involved with the Houston Astros and the cheating scandal. So in year one, you know, he's at 46.5. He does jump up considerably to 57. Again, this feels like he will get in, Ron, but being punished a little bit for what happened there with Houston.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think he's going to be the guy to make the biggest jump this year in the voting. Talk about elegant player. He's about as elegant as got from both sides of the plate. What he did in the postseason for Houston is historically one of the best postseasons ever. Always was a great postseason player. Had some remarkable seasons in a Mets uniform as well. Carlos Beltran is a special player. Special players belong in Cooperstown.
Yeah, you look at overall a 9-time All-Star, the 435 home runs, fourth most among switch hitters. And again, your point about Wagner wasn't great in the postseason. This guy was. A 10-21 OPS in the playoffs is massive.
He's a great player. That took a couple of knocks because what happened in Houston.
Right.
But again, I think there's going to be a huge jump this year for votes for Carlos.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for not being a first ballot guy. People want to have their vote heard, fine. But eventually he's going to be where he belongs. Could be 4 Hall of Famers, 5, who knows? We'll find out January 21st again, right here live on MLB Network announced. Listen, it is an excellent read. And by the way, I like the fact you point out the 40 because you said from 1955 to 95, that's the number that's in there. So whenever people say, hey, there's too many Hall of Famers, well, actually, no, there should be more because in accordance to expansion, there should be more players, etc. Again, the read is excellent. As far as the research in terms of doing this all the way through, let's go with that Tier 2 specifically, because I found that fascinating. A couple of names, Paul Goldschmidt, I was like, Nolan Arenado, maybe just gets in because of defensive excellence. A thought or two on both those guys, Goldie and Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the list right here in Tier 2, these are the guys who've been the stars of our game for 10 years, in some cases more. Like, you can't tell the story of the last decade of baseball without these guys. I think you're underselling Arenado a little bit, right? Maybe the top 5 defensive third baseman of all time. At least that's what the metrics say. The Gold Gloves go with it. 341 home runs he's got. And I don't think he's going to get dinged for the Coors Field factor anymore because Todd Helton's in now, Larry Walker. He had some good years in St. Louis the first couple of years he was there. And if you look at the history of the Hall of Fame, third basemen are historically underrated. He's going to be in Jose Ramirez, Manny Machado. That's going to do a really, really good deal to improve the state of third baseman. As far as Goldschmidt, I think I heard Ron say he maybe needs one more good year. I don't terribly disagree with that, even though I don't think it's likely. It just, you look at what he's done, it's been pretty consistent year in and year out for more than a decade. He's got the all-around excellence of base running, of defense, obviously won an MVP. These things all matter to voters. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to keep him out when his time comes.
All right, so that's the thought on Goldie and Arenado. I love the fact the different tiers. Let's go right to Tier 3, which is a pretty fun list here. This is just, you know, literally the legends in their prime zones. Why is this now? After what we've seen from both these guys, Mike, now the best is yet to come for Shohei and Soto.
Yeah, on my own personal list, when I wrote these tiers down, I actually labeled this one Gods Among Us because that's kind of where we're at. Listen, imagine a scenario, barring anything horrible off the field. What is the scenario where Shohei Ohtani doesn't make the Hall of Fame? Like, we don't even have to recite the MVPs and the wins above replacement. He's done things that no one has ever done, and he's almost certain to continue doing those things. And as far as Juan Soto goes, you look at his age and you look at his comparables, the only guys who have ever done what Soto has done to start a career, we're talking about Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, and Mel Ott. Like, before the Mets signed him, I looked into the possible trajectory of his career. He's highly likely to hit 500 home runs, and he may also set the all-time record for walks. Like, you cannot get to a career start this good and not get in unless you get injured or you have some off-field problems. As I said in the article, he'll get in with a Mets hat, but he was already in before he got to Queens.
You know, Mike, what I found interesting is Tier 4 only has one member, and that's Giancarlo Stanton, as the way it should be. But you know what's interesting about Giancarlo is that there's a lot of talk one way or the other. He's either a certifiable Hall of Famer or he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. He's 72 home runs short of 500. Make an argument for Stanton that he needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's, I think, by far the most contentious name on this list, and it's actually really easy for me to make that argument, right? First of all, if he gets to 500, well, everyone who's ever hit 500 and has been clear of PED associations has made it in the Hall of Fame. So full stop right there, right? Did he have an amazing peak? Well, yes, he's got an MVP award. And then we don't always count what happens in the postseason. He's been an unbelievable postseason hitter. The 7 homers last year. He's got one of the highest postseason OPSs of all time. And if you also want to think about the narrative of the last 10 years, it's been the StatCast era. And who personifies StatCast more than maybe the hardest hitting man to ever live? He's got to get closer to 500, but I think he can do it. And if he does, he's a slam dunk for me.
Let's skip ahead to tier 7. Because again, with Stanton, you're looking at longevity, 500 home runs. This is interesting. This is just guys who in a short span have been amazing. Blake Snell or DeGrom, if they win a 3rd Cy Young, Mike, do they get in?
Maybe they have to. Listen, I know you don't look at these guys and think, oh, they're going to get to 300 wins, 200 wins, enough innings. Like, clearly their careers will be limited in some way. But in my eyes, a 3rd Cy Young is an absolutely guaranteed ticket to Cooperstown. If you look at everyone who's ever done it, they're either already in, like Koufax and those guys, or will be in, Verlander, Scherzer, Kershaw. The only guy who's ever done it and not made it to Cooperstown is Roger Clemens, and there's obvious reasons for that with the PED associations. And when I look at these two guys, especially DeGrom, since he came back at the end of last year and looked really good again, I don't think either of them are going to be, consistently successful for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Do I think either one of them has one great season left in them? Yeah, that's not that hard for me to come up with. And if they do, and they get that 3rd Cy, it's going to be a very interesting conversation in the next 10 or 15 years.
I'm with Mike on that one. It's interesting with those two pitchers in particular is that when we look at Hall of Famers, we'd love a long and storied, brilliant career. But sometimes we look at very varied careers that are shorter, but have been so excellent you can't overlook it. 3 Cy Youngs put you in that category.
It is definitely going to be a rarefied company if those guys can get there as well. All right, Mike, how about the relievers? This gets interesting when you're looking at names like Kenley Jansen and Aroldis Chapman and even Edwin Diaz or Josh Hader, right?
Yeah, what do you do with relievers is a complicated question, and you can go into wins above replacement is not really going to value relievers in the way that people do. You can talk about saves, but listen, I am going to be a voter next year for the first time, and I do not care about saves. I'm not going to vote on saves. I truly do not care about them. So it comes down simply to this, right? Are relievers or are relievers pitchers? Because if they're pitchers and you compare those guys to like above average starting pitchers, well, they didn't get paid the same way. They're not valued the same way, then no. But if you consider relievers to be their own separate class, you don't have to argue that hard to say those are the best relievers ever, right? And I really truly think if Billy Wagner gets in, which he might, that's going to open the door in a big way.
It really will. Billy Wagner will have a lot to say with what happens in the near future for these great relievers. And I think also the game has changed. There was a time where you had 1,450 innings you had to cover in a major league season. 1,000 of that was usually by your starting pitchers. Now it's more like a 50-50 proposition, so the relievers are more important than ever.
To that point, Mike, specifically a reliever in Kenley Jansen, currently a free agent, does still he need to show you something in order to get your vote?
No, I mean, I think he wants to continue pitching in part because he needs a couple more saves to move ahead of Lee Smith to get into top 3 in saves. And that will matter to him. I'm sure it will matter to a lot of voters. For me, no, like what possibly more do we need to see from him? He's been doing this since what, 2012, 2011, thereabouts? More than a decade of sustained excellence for a reliever is a huge deal for me because we've seen so many guys come up and be great for a year or 2 or 3 and disappear. For these guys to do it year in and year out, that's truly special. There's not anything else he needs to show me, at least.
Year of voting, you will be next year. This is Billy Wagner's last year. If you had the ballot this year, would you vote for Billy the Kid?
I think I would, because even though there's not an officially different relief pitcher position like there is DH, it's clear that the game has treated guys this way. And I know for a lot of people, it's, well, he wasn't good enough to be a starter. And if he was a starter, he wouldn't have been as great. I hear it, but I think we have turned the game into bullpen ball so much that I can't ignore relievers. And inning for inning, he's maybe the most dominant reliever we've seen. I think I would vote for him.
A tier unto himself is Mike Petriello. And by the way, that Gods Among Us, you should have called it Gods and Monsters, the great Ian McKellen wave from years past. That would have been great. Good luck to your Devils, and we'll talk hockey next time.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
いかがでしたか？ 王などの指標は関係なしに殿堂入りが確実と言われているのはさすがの評価の高さでしたね。前人未到の記録が多すぎてそうなると思いますが、果たしてこの先大谷選手に並ぶような選手は出てくるのでしょうか。日本人からまたとんでもない伝説を残すような選手が出てきてくれることを楽しみにしています。今度は左右両投げのスラッガーが出てきてほしいですね。それでは次回の動画でお会いしましょう。さようなら。